his overall effect on the court is more so in that lane.
Yeah.
But he could also at the same time very much look at how high that scoring went and say, no, I could be worth more than that. But Jeff, does that not feel like a Reggie Jackson type contract this early in the rebuild? What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Monday, June 6th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy. It is Jeff Mother Lovin' Iafrady. Jeff, how you doing, my guy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm excited to talk about who we're going to talk about because it's somebody that I've been hearing a lot of chirping about. The reports are coming out more and more about Colin Sexton, and I feel like this is a perfect time for me and you to kind of break it down for Pistons fans or just fans in general that are looking to sign Colin Sexton. So I'm
Right,
excited.
right. And your initial thought might be exactly what our initial thought was. What the didn't we just talk about this guy last week?
Right.
Well, the talks have only gone up and up and up as time has gone on. In fact, the just all of the reports surrounding Colin Sexton, apparently, per Chris Fedor, who is a Cavs NBA reporter, the Pistons and the Pacers are reportedly the biggest threats to pry Colin Sexton. Apparently, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton will soon be taking a trip together
Yep.
and reported and it's stated that Colin Sexton, he might be going into it. He might be thinking it's their last trip together. He's not sure, but Darius Garland wants him back in Cleveland, which is great. However, Colin Sexton reportedly wants starter level guard money. And so with that, Jeff, let's have a little bit more of an extended conversation
Mhm.
about Colin Sexton because we touched on him for a couple minutes in our video last week, and I thought we did a pretty good job. However, now that we know that Detroit is both interested, but also what the idea that Sexton has in his head, what do you think Detroit fans should be thinking right now? And what are your thoughts about Colin Sexton?
I think he's a good player. 23 years old, obviously restricted free agent, and that's something you have to think about as well. If the Pistons or the Pacers or even the Spurs, I'm hearing too, want to get a Colin Sexton, it may even be with a sign and trade, and that's kind of a part of this we have to discuss. He's represented by Clutch Sports, by Rich Paul. He's going to get paid. Let's just admit that. He is. Some team's
Mhm.
going to pay Colin Sexton, whether it's the Cavs, whether it's Indiana, whoever it is, San Antonio. As a Pistons fan, 20 to 25 million dollars, and we had this conversation about Jalen Brunson, and what kind of shied me away also was just paying a guy like that. And listen, Cowan's better than Jalen Brunson in terms of a 20 point per game scorer. Those guys don't fall out, they don't grow on trees. But with Colin Sexton, you got to face some realities, and I have a pros and cons list. A couple of the pros, when I was watching him, obviously he's a score first off guard. He would fit with Cade Cunningham. Obviously, he fit with Darius Garland, and Darius Garland's another guy and he wants Colin back, so clearly their relationship's good.
Right.
He has a high motor, high intensity. Everybody remembers that, what was it, the 3-on-5 in college when he absolutely took over, and those clips in high school of him staring down guys. I love his mentality. I love the way he approaches the game. He's clutch. He really is. Down the stretch, he seems like he gets better. And
Mhm.
I think he would fit the mentality that you're looking for to kind of build. A lot of, the Cavs players even credit him for his mentality with the young guys, and that's always a great thing. But and also the Pistons, if you listen to Troy Weaver, he talks about it. We need talent. We need shot makers. Colin's that. So he
Right.
fits the timeline, and that's all good. But there are cons. And coming off a knee injury, that's something you have to take into consideration. Already a undersized guard. He played the two guard
Mhm.
for the Pistons if you were to come here. He's not very good defensively. So if he is in a backcourt with Cade Cunningham, now that you're asking Cade to be more of the take on the best defender, take on the best guard, whoever it is, you can't put Colin on him. As good as he is offensively, it makes up for how bad he is defensively. And another thing too is this fit makes more sense if you're looking at Keegan Murray. Like if you're
Mhm.
absolutely sold on getting Keegan Murray or whoever it is, if you're looking at a Shaden Sharp, and maybe Shaden Sharp if you feel like he's not ready enough, but that's a different conversation. But Jaden Ivey, I just don't think he fits. And we talked about his role before, Sean. I see Colin Sexton as his career develops. He can kind of be a Tyler Hero, a guy who can start, but
Yep.
someone that you want just coming off the bench because then he has a lot more freedom. He doesn't have to, he can just go get buckets, do what he does best. I don't know if I feel comfortable paying a guy who I see in that role $20 to $25 million, especially now. There's going to be multiple suitors. You're going to have to overpay. And with a
Mhm.
guy who sometimes does have questionable shot selection, I mean, you've seen it if you watch Colin Sexton. Like sometimes you're just like, huh.
Right.
But then other times he's making these shots. So I would say no as a Pistons fan. I think there's spots he would fit, Sean. But the question is, would you pay him $20 to $25 million for 4 years, or even a sign and trade if you have to trade away assets? I wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's gonna come down to. Now, first
Yeah.
of all, as I hear these rumblings, as far as the draft implications, the more I hear these rumblings, the more I feel like it seems like we're going the Keegan Murray route if he's available at 5. However, I don't wanna focus on that primarily today. Maybe that's more of a conversation we have on the podcast later this week. However, what I do wanna focus on with Sexton's game in particular, I mean, obviously he has athleticism, right? And hoping, barring that he can come back from this knee injury, it's an MCL or it's a meniscus injury. That's something that you can come back from and be a really good player. And generally speaking, that's not the worst type of injury. However, any knee injury is not a good injury.
Right.
So that's gonna take time to adjust. But also, you're gonna the other thing it's gonna come down to is what is he going to be able to do? I mean, like you said, he could be a good off ball scoring guard, but at the same time, we're gonna need him to do more than scoring as well.
Right.
Is he gonna be able to create plays for other guys on the court as well? Is he gonna be able to do things in the pick and roll as far as passing? What is he gonna be able to do in that front? Because obviously, even though he didn't have great pick and roll partners in his time in Cleveland, I still feel like he could have created more for his teammates around him. But in addition, I see the scoring stats and yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Like it's impressive what the guy can do. Any guy that can average, in his peak 24 points on an effective field goal percentage of 52%
Yeah.
is a pretty good guard. But like at the same time, we're seeing how many guys can do that in this league now. So the question is, what do you want to pay a guy like Colin Sexton? And it seems like he wants something north of $20 million a year. And Jeff, I don't want to pay anything near $20 million a year for Colin Sexton. Now, if it's like a 3-year, $45 million or 4-year, $60
Yeah.
million deal,
Like Jeremy's contract,
exactly.
initially. But he, yeah.
Yeah, that's a different conversation because in my opinion, his overall effect on the court is more so in that lane.
Yeah.
But he could also at the same time very much look at how high that scoring went and say, "No, I could be worth more than that." But Jeff, does that not feel like a Reggie Jackson type contract this early in the rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like expectation wise, if you throw money at Colin Sexton, I think people are going to be expecting big things, like
Yep.
coming here. And you talked about the season where he put up 24 points. People forget the talent that was on the team on the Cavaliers during that season when he averaged 24 points. He was asked to average 24 points. If he comes to the Pistons, his role is going. There's more talent here. You're expecting him to go get somebody at 5, sign some
Mhm.
other people. So. I, and you notice this year, and this isn't a shot at Colin Sexton. I know he's been available the first 2 seasons, at least initially coming out of
Right.
college. So it's not like he's injury prone, but at the same time, the Cavaliers felt like they didn't really miss a beat when he left. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that kind of worries me as well. You talk about impact, and we know he could score the basketball, but when you're out and they go and trade for Karis LeVert, they felt like they were still kind of, they did slow down a little bit at the end, but they were still effective
Right.
during the
It was
season.
really
So
more so the loss of Jared Allen that hurt them than
right,
Colin Sexton.
right,
You see the effect of a guy like Jared Allen leaving, how the entire basis of this team fell apart.
right.
Whereas once Colin Sexton was out of the lineup, everything if anything, it might have made it easier for Garland to open up the offense for him and to just truly have that capability of handling the ball. I mean, those guys, in my opinion, I don't like the fit of Garland and Sexton together. I
Yeah.
mean, it seems like Garland differs and thinks that those two could be dynamic together, which certainly very well could be. And if they do reach that apex, Colin Sexton is definitely a guy that could be dangerous alongside those guys. But if I'm looking at what he would have to do in Detroit, I mean, I think he could very much put up a season like he did in 2020, 2021, where he put up, 24 points a game. I'm sure he could average north of 20 points a game on a Pistons roster if they didn't have Cade Cunningham and Sadiq Bey.
Right.
But the thing is like when you come in and you already have other guys that can score, and it's a lineup that thrives best on team first mentality basketball. And it's a system that's all about dishing the ball to the guys on the outside and moving the ball as much as possible. I just question where Sexton's effect, like how effective he's truly going to be in that type of lineup. Not saying he can't pass, but
Right.
let's
No,
be honest, playmaking is not his strength.
no, you're right on that. And another part of it is, it's awesome to have multiple guys down the stretch who can go get a bucket. Like if you have Cade and Cunningham and Collin Sexton down the stretch, you're like, okay,
Mhm.
two guys that can close the game. But there's a part of me also that doesn't like the idea. And the Boston Celtics are a good example. They have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, two guys, who either could close a game. But at the same time, with Cade and his ability to kind of control the floor, I don't know if I want to take the ball out of his hands and put it into Collins' hands late in the game. Like I'd rather much just
Right.
have Cade all the time handle the ball and then have other guys just going and getting a bucket. And I think Collin could fit it, but again, it's I'm not sold, and if I'm not sold on somebody, I just
Right.
don't do it. I'm never gonna fully commit. And people bring up all the time. That's why initially Jalen Brunson I wasn't really on board with, but Collin I think is a better player, but I still wouldn't probably give him the 4 year,
Right.
$25 million annually. I
Espe
wouldn't.
especially when coming up in June, you have the opportunity at the 5th overall pick to have your selection, possibly at the 2 best guards in the draft.
Right, that's a big
And
one.
Cade Cunningham came into the league, and his salary is just north of $10 million a year. So, whoever you bring in is going to be at less than $10 million a season and can possibly, towards the end of that contract, give almost that exact same production.
Hmm.
So why would I spend more to get the same thing that I could in this upcoming draft? Now, again, you can make the argument, well, Sean, you could go get Keegan Murray, and then you have a lineup where you also have, Collin Sexton, Cade Cunningham, Keegan Murray, Sadiq Bey. Like, yeah, that's an intriguing lineup. Don't get me wrong, but again, I just think that if you're really going for the upside move, the upside's in the draft.
Yeah,
Collin Sexton to me feels like you say, Tyler Hero. I see like a Jordan Clarkson
yeah,
kind of guy
yeah. Another
where,
one.
yeah, where I think Tyler Hero, I think the difference with him is I think he brings a little bit more on the defensive end. I think he has a little bit more to offer there. I
Hmm.
think he's also a little bit more of a playmaking creator as well. I think he can do some stuff in the pick and roll and stuff. Whereas with Clarkson, he's really like, Clarkson is like he's just looking to get a shot. He's just looking to get a bucket. I kind of see that similar thing with Sexton, and I mean they also played together, which is kind of a funny little thing. But yeah, no, it's not that I don't like the player, but it's like when you're building the Detroit Pistons, it's like I just don't love the fit for what he would bring on this team. It's the difference between Brunson and Sexton for me is that Brunson's scoring doesn't require him to dominate the ball.
Yeah, and
Whereas
you're
I
right on that.
feel whereas I feel like, in my opinion, if Sexton's going to have the ball in his hands, or if Sexton's gonna score, even though he can be effective off the ball, he also needs a little more time in the shot clock to create for himself and to slash into the rim and to actually make something happen. Whereas Brunson can pull up from 3 even if someone's contending him, and also he can also drive it to the lane or even hit a mid-range if need be as well. I just think,
Yeah.
Brunson has the ability to score but not hog as much of that shot clock or even just the ball in general.
Yeah, and I think a part of that, you saw a sample size of him with Luka Doncic. So you see a guy, and we compare Cade to him all the time.
Yep.
So you kind of have that, and that's why I respect it with Colin. He had the ball in his hands a lot through his time in
Mhm.
Cleveland, so it's hard to kind of dictate what he'd be in Detroit. But you have
Right.
to understand too. You brought up a great point about drafting this year, using that 5th pick on potentially one of the 2 of who we think the best guards are in the draft. You have to think of where the Cleveland Cavaliers are right now, and they have to pay Colin. We're going to have to pay Cade. We're going to have to pay whoever we take at 5. I mean, if you
Mhm.
give one of these guys a 4 year deal, and he does fit the timeline, I just financially, you know me, I want to go get the big fish. I just don't
Yep.
see Colin as that guy, but certainly a great player. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear what people think about it, though. Honestly, this is
Yeah.
it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, ultimately, I could see Detroit very much in a position to sign him this summer if they would like to. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think he's a better fit in Indiana for the sole reason that I think, when comparing Cade to Halliburton, I think Halliburton doesn't have nearly as much of the offensive game that Cade has as far as creating for himself more consistently. So I think for the Pacers, I think that would actually be a really good fit. But I think for the Pistons specifically, since Cade is so effective at scoring, you want a guy next to him that can score and can bring that offensive need, but also you really also want to maximize the defensive side of the ball at that position as well. And I think that's really what we're getting at. It's like if you're gonna find that guy, it's like, all right, Ivy and Sharp, we both know with their offensive game that they could be dynamic, but we also think that they could develop and actually be effective for us on the defensive side of the ball.
Even Ben Mathurin, you could throw him in there.
Exactly. Even Ben Mathurin, absolutely a guy that, whenever we don't bring up, it's like, hey, Ben Mathurin, where the is he at in the conversation? I'm like, don't worry, I didn't forget about Ben Mathurin, okay?
Yeah, I know. We got a lot of lovers.
I'm like, I didn't forget. I promise, okay? But that is a great question, Jeff. What do you think about Collin Sexton? Let us know in the comment section down below. But also, shout out to our From Half Court members. Jeff, we got Dominique Davis, Justin Jones, and Wade Ballou. Shout out to the From Half Court Army. And if you want to join as well, be sure to click that join button down below, where you can play Jeff and I each month on a 2K stream live on the From Half Court channel, but all other perks and goodies as well. So be sure to check that out. Also, you can join us live each and every week for the From Half Court podcast as we record it. So with that, Jeff, we got finals basketball this week. All sorts of good stuff happening. Thank you so much for being here, man. Follow Jeff on Twitter. Follow myself. We want to thank y'all so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe and join the From Half Court membership.
Do